Well, hello again, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger, and today I'm going to be reading an article on Jose Perdomo. Now, ultimately, more than likely in the future, I will do a larger amount of research and put together something a little bit more of a complete package as it relates to the story of Jose Perdomo. So this is an initial warm-up video. We're going to read this article together and learn about Jose, who he is. The article is titled "The Men Who Killed Lennon." Jose Joaquin Sangenis Perdomo. This is the spy and professional assassin who killed John Lennon. Perdomo was tasked to provide security for Lennon at the rock star's upscale apartment complex, the Dakota, the night of the murder. He was an anti-Castro Cuban exile, member of the Brigade 2506 during the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, a failed CIA operation to overthrow Fidel Castro. Joaquin Sangenis had worked closely with convicted Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis for about 10 years on the CIA's payroll, and in retrospect, it is safe to conclude that Nixon was behind John Lennon's murder. Sturgis falsely claimed that Perdomo had died in 1974, and since Nixon was essentially starting over in 1980 as Ronald Reagan's secret advisor, Sturgis and Nixon obviously handpicked the right man for what they considered to be the right job. The story gets even more bizarre given the story of bin Laden's recent death, despite reports that he actually died in 2001. Now, it appears that in the world of intelligence operatives, there are people who are officially dead who are in fact alive, and people who are officially alive who are in fact dead. The evidence that implicates Dakota doorman Jose Joaquin Sangenis Perdomo as John Lennon's killer is far more extensive than claiming to dump a body at sea. Records reveal a Jose Joaquin Sangenis Perdomo, aliases Joaquin Sangenis and Sam Genis, was an anti-Castro Cuban exile, and a member of the Brigade 2506 at the Bay of Pigs invasion of 61, which was a failed CIA operation to overthrow Fidel Castro. Perdomo was a professional hitman who had worked closely with convicted Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis, who is deceased, for about 10 years on the CIA's payroll. Jose Perdomo was the doorman at the Dakota on December 8, 1980, which was the night John Lennon was killed. Jose Perdomo was at the crime scene when the murder occurred. Jose Perdomo asked accused assassin Mark David Chapman immediately after the shooting if he knew what he had just done. Chapman replied that he had just shot John Lennon. Jose Perdomo told police Chapman was Lennon's assailant. One of the arresting officers, Peter Cullen, did not believe that Chapman shot Lennon. Cullen believed the shooter was a handyman at the Dakota, but Perdomo convinced Cullen it was Chapman. Cullen thought that Chapman, quote, looked like a guy who worked at a bank, unquote. Excuse me. Jose Perdomo was an anti-Castro Cuban exile. Perdomo and Chapman discussed the Bay of Pigs invasion and JFK's assassination a few hours before Lennon was killed. This suggests Perdomo was a member of Brigade 2506 during the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, the failed CIA operation to overthrow Fidel Castro. Cuban information archives reveal Jose Joaquin Sangenis Perdomo, aliases Joaquin Sangenis and Sam Genis was a member of the Brigade 2506 during the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. Joaquin Sangenis worked closely with convicted Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis, who was on the CIA's payroll. Frank Sturgis claimed Joaquin Sangenis died of natural causes in 1974. However, this was never confirmed, and this assertion was made in 1981 by Warren Hinkle and William Turner in the book entitled This Fish is Red, The Story of the Secret War Against Castro. Here is an excerpt. On a June morning in 1972, the week after the Watergate break-in, Joaquin Sangenis left his modest import-export office in Miami's Cuban barrio and drove down Southwest 8th Street to the Anthony Abrams Chevrolet Agency. Jose Joaquin Sangenis Perdomo was a plain man with undifferentiated features, which was, in his profession, an asset. He was a professional spy. His personality was suited his work in that he was neither encouraged close personal relationships. His was a lonely life, sweetened by habitual cups of Cuban coffee. He looked forward to his forthcoming retirement, although he would not live long enough to enjoy it. It is testimony to the importance his employers gave to his carefully nurtured anonymity that when he died of natural causes in 1974, his family was not notified until after the funeral. Joaquin Sangenis was, for over 10 years, the head of the CIA's super-secret Operation 40 in Miami. The wear of a decade of living in the shadows showed on the spy's face that morning as he drove into the automobile agency's service entrance. Sangenis had launched scores of ships and planes on clandestine raids against Cuba and had sent hundreds of men on missions from which there was no return. He was able to offer only the most mute of patriotic explanations to the bereaved families. There was no official missing in action reports in the secret war against Cuba. It was Joaquin Sangenis' job to keep his troops, as himself, faceless. Whether Jose Perdomo actually died in 1974, as Hinkle and Turner wrote, is a point worth challenging. What evidence did they support this claim? On page 354 of their book, under Notes and Sources, they give the following source for their claim that Sangenis died in 1974. Author's interview with Frank Sturgis. How much faith should we place in Frank Sturgis's word, particularly on this critical point? Set aside that Sturgis is a convicted felon for the Watergate burglary. As an employee of the CIA, Sturgis had plenty of reason to lie, particularly if Jose Joaquin Sangenis Perdomo was the same person who worked as a doorman at the Dakota on the night that Lennon was murdered, December 8, 1980. Hinkle and Turner's book, The Fish is Red, was published in 1981, in the year after Lennon's murder. Consequently, it makes sense that Sturgis would want to muddy the water a bit. In addition, Hinkle and Turner revealed the importance the CIA placed on Sangenis' anonymity when they described his alleged death. It is testimony to the importance of his employers, which is the CIA, gave to his carefully nurtured anonymity that when he died of natural causes in 74, his family was not notified until after the funeral. Did he really die of natural causes in 1974? There is plenty of reasons to believe the claim was disinformation generated by Sturgis on behest of the CIA. The CIA had every reason to lie in order to continue Sangenis' anonymity, particularly after the murder of Lennon. According to the Cuban archives, Perdomo was known as Joaquin Sangenis and Sam Genis. He was mostly known as an anti-Cuban anti-Castro Cuban exile, a member of the Brigade 2506, a miserably failed CIA operation which cost company head Allen Dulles his job and maybe John F. Kennedy his life. Also by a mythic lone gunman who turned out to play Patsy too. In fact, during that evening, Chapman waited hours for Lennon to return. Perdomo had spoken with length to him about the invasion, Cuban-American politics, strange topic for strangers, one waiting for a rock star. Imagine Perdomo had reason to insist Mark was the man. Perdomo, also known as Sangenis, had worked side by side with with convicted, now deceased Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis on about a decade on the CIA payroll. Sturgis misleadingly claimed Joaquin Sangenis died of natural causes in 1974. He claimed it was the company's way of keeping Sangenis anonymity. Perdomo may still be alive, plumbing in some near or far outpost. There's always work for anonymous men who know how to do what needs to be done and vanish. Imagine Perdomo was so invisible he wasn't identified by name for more than 6 years after Lennon's murder. He was mistakenly referred to first as Jay Hastings, the bearded, burly desk clerk who worked in the lobby and was on duty the night Lennon was killed. In fact, Lennon ran from the shooter and collapsed before Hastings and Yoko. This information is in the book The Love You Make, an insider story of the Beatles, written by the group's management team, Peter Brown, along with Stephen Gaines. Sangenis was an opportunistic little man who managed to punch the CIA meal ticket in the rest of his life, along with Frank Sturgis, who was a member of Operation 40, the secret police of the Cuban invasion force. The ultra-secret Operation 40 included some non-political, conservative exile businessmen, but its hardcore was made up of the informers, assassins for hire, and mob henchmen, whose goal was to make the counter-revolution safe for comfortable ways of old Cuba. They were the elite troops of the old guard within the exile movement, who made effective alliance with CIA right-wingers. Imagine the theory we've been told, that Lennon had walked past Chapman, who was to the right then rear of him in the dark entryway. If Chapman had called out, "Mr. Lennon," and John stopped and turned, it was possible, though difficult, for him to hit Lennon on the left shoulder, then as Lennon turned to flee, to hit him in the upper left back. Yet Chapman told Judge Dennis Edwards at the sentencing hearing that he didn't say anything to Lennon, that he just fired. Imagine, if you will, a secondary theory. Perdomo, or another operative, fired from the doorway leading to the service elevator, which was at the left of the walkway and in front of Lennon. There are two series of 2 shots. First, 2 shots hit the left shoulder. As Lennon runs towards the lobby stairway, the other 2 shots hit his upper left back. Shooting from that doorway seems a more plausible way to make those hits. Since the autopsy was not made public, we do not know if it was 3 or 5 shots exited, grazed, or missed Lennon to hit the glass lobby door. Imagine crime scene witnesses varied in their accounts of whether or not Chapman called to Lennon. No convincing evidence was presented that Chapman had caused Lennon to turn. Also, there wasn't a trial since Chapman already confessed. It was simply a sentencing hearing. There was no official testimony or any witnesses. The case was declared closed on the night of the murder, and the police report is lacking in any substantive detail. Yet what does it say is that Chapman was carrying $2,201.76 in cash when he was arrested and declared himself unemployed. You wonder why eyes didn't open at that and complete inquiry wasn't made into the death of a figure like John Lennon. Could it possibly be a cover-up? Had assassinations like this ever happened before? Imagine, and it is impossible to dispute the conclusion, that Mark David Chapman was absolutely nothing beyond just another classic patsy on autopilot. That's it for the article. Thank you for joining me. What I like to say is do your own research. Again, I merely read an article. I'm not saying Jose Perdomo shot John Lennon. I read you an article. Now it's up to you if you would like to further pursue this information or consider it. Me, I'm just the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. So wherever you are, stay cool. Maybe you need to stay warm. That's none of my business, but I am going to ask if you do have a pet that you would hug that pet, show it some extra love or attention today. And that's all that I would ask you to do. Peace.